Hi, and welcome to Talking with Myself, the podcast where I, Megan, literally do just that. Today's episode is the first official one, so thank you so much for being here. The title is The Pages I Return to, simply because I'll be talking about journaling, the hobby I've come to love and why you might want to try it in 2026. Feel free to listen in and notice if anything resonates. Over the past year, my journal has slowly become one of the places I return to the most. It's turned into something I genuinely love, and I'll take almost any opportunity to talk about it. I was speaking with my mom the other day, and after a while, she just looked at me and said, Megan, do you realize you've been yapping about personalized journals for almost an hour? And she was not wrong. But journaling for me isn't just about the notebook itself. It's become this space for creativity and reflection and honestly part of something bigger. One of my goals for 2026 is to be more intentional with my time and to invest more in things that feel meaningful instead of just defaulting to screens or distractions. And I know that I'm not the only one feeling this shift. There seems to be a growing interest in slower catalog hobbies, things that involve creating more, consuming less, and being a bit more present with how we spend our time. And at the same time, there have also been articles describing custom journals like the very popular leather traveler's journals from Louise Common or Paper Republic as, fashion accessories or status symbols. And while some of them can be quite pricey, I agree with other enthusiasts who say, those conversations often focus on the performative side of journaling and miss the real value. Because at its core, journaling isn't about the notebook, it's about what you do with the pages inside. And there are so many different ways to do that. Here are just a few of my favorites. My first experience with journaling was gratitude journaling. And I've been journaling consistently for a little over a year now. And I started with gratitude because I never really liked the idea of the classic Dear Diary. No offense to anyone who enjoys that. I tried it in high school and I just realized it's not really for me. So I started simply. Each day I'd make a short list of things I was grateful for. Some of the days the list was long and other days it was very, very short. But over time, it changed and it became less about lists and more about the highlights of my day, the little moments I didn't want to forget or things I'd want to look back on when I was feeling down. Almost like a quiet reminder that life isn't always that heavy. Gratitude journaling is a really easy place to start, especially when you don't know what to write about. However, in the same breath, I would say not to do this every single day because it will become repetitive. And then naturally, brain dumping started to become part of my journaling as well. Now, brain dumping is what I turn to when my thoughts feel overwhelming. This can include responsibilities, relationships, finances, to do lists, future plans, just life in general. And instead of trying to organize it all in my head, I would write everything down. It doesn't necessarily have to be structured. Sometimes it's just a stream of consciousness. Whatever comes out, comes out. It's a form of catharsis, really. You're releasing thoughts and emotions that have been building up, and by unloading that mental weight, your mind has more space to process things calmly. Now, I usually keep writing until I feel done, and then I take a moment to reflect on what I've written. And this I find is a very crucial part, which I will get to in a moment. But anyways, some people like to set time aside each week for a brain dump, almost like a reset. And I think this is a really clever idea. Personally, I tend to do it more when the moment calls for it, usually when I'm feeling emotionally triggered or overwhelmed, but I might just give the weekly session a try. Another method I've come to really enjoy is something called commonplacing. You may have heard of it before, but basically it's a place to record things you come across externally or niche interests rather than writing only from your inner world. It could be quotes, recipes, research topics, observations, reviews, anything that sparks your interest, really. And I would highly recommend checking out Amy Catriona on TikTok. I do hope I pronounced her name correctly. Her explanation on commonplacing is really insightful, and her own commonplace journal is a great example. So, credit to her. She described it as curating a personal encyclopedia. I really love that phrase. You don't need to learn about everything, but I encourage you to take advantage of the plethora of accessible information. Learn about something, and over time, it will become a museum of your own curiosity, a colorful collection of things that catch your attention. Mine already includes new words I've learned, foods I've tried, quotes, a couple of small book reflections, but I would honestly love to expand it into more categories. Mine also lives in my general journal, which I know probably isn't ideal, along with everything else that's in there. So maybe I'll dedicate a notebook solely to that in the future. Now, what I like about commonplacing is that it feels lighter. It's less serious, it's more exploratory. It's a record of what draws me in without judgment. And in a way, it still helps with self awareness because it shows who I am from the outside, what I naturally pay attention to. It can also help to focus on one thing at a time, especially in a world that's full of short form videos, short attention spans, and endless scrolling that quietly drains your time and energy. So, commonplacing can feel very thoughtful and intentional, but sometimes journaling isn't about thinking more. Maybe it's about playing a little. And that's where junk journaling comes in. Junk journaling is more visual and creative. It's similar to scrapbooking, where you add things like stickers, photos, movie tickets, wrappers, maps, pressed flowers, honestly, whatever you'd like. And what makes it so enjoyable is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. There's very little planning involved, and the page can look however it wants to look. I do a little bit of this again in my general journal, and it's a really nice way to keep small memories. And it's also quite relaxing because it's so unstructured and expressive. In a way, junk journaling is about keeping little pieces of your life. But sometimes the most special things to keep are words, the ones we leave for ourselves or the ones someone else leaves for us. One of those is writing a letter to yourself. It's a simple thing to include in your journal ecosystem because it makes it feel more personal. And for me, it's not really like a time capsule. It's more like a reminder to be proud of my journey or something to look back on when I'm maybe not in the best headspace. It can remind you that difficult moments are temporary and that you felt okay before and that you probably will again. And then there are letters or notes from loved ones. My boyfriend actually once wrote a small note in the back of my sketchbook, and just seeing it there, just knowing it was there, made the sketchbook so much more special. It's a similar reminder to the letter from yourself, but this time it's coming from someone you trust, someone you know cares about you. And while all of these journaling styles might look simple on the surface, they often lead back to the same place, understanding yourself a little bit better. Because beyond being a hobby, there's actually a lot of psychology behind why journaling works. Firstly, journaling is often used as a therapeutic technique. It encourages honesty, which helps you understand your experiences and emotions more clearly. When you write things down, you can also compare your fears to reality. Sometimes you may realize that those fears aren't as real or as permanent as they felt. And other times you remember how you've overcome similar things in the past. Again, there's also this idea of catharsis, which we touched on in brain dumping. It's the release of strong emotions, the relief that comes from expressing what you've possibly been suppressing. But what makes journaling different from simple venting is reflection. I mentioned that earlier. Now, when you reflect, you start to notice patterns in your thinking and in your behavior. You may identify emotional triggers. And a really great part of reflection is that you can create a little bit of distance between yourself and your thoughts. I believe this is often referred to as detaching. And this Distance helps with self awareness as well as emotional regulation. One thing psychology keeps pointing back to is that journaling can help in lowering anxiety and perceived stress. Practices like gratitude journaling can gradually shift your mindset, training your brain to notice the positive instead of automatically focusing on the negative. If you're thinking of starting, my biggest suggestion is just to try a few different methods. You don't need it to look perfect or aesthetic. Let it be messy and let it evolve. Give yourself at least 30 days of fairly consistent journaling and see what feels natural. And if you're using it for your mental health specifically, try to keep your journal as a safe, private space, somewhere you can be honest without judgment. You can still share it with people you trust when you feel ready to do so, but it's not something you have to do. And again, prioritize making it a safe space. And maybe most importantly, try to be compassionate in the way that you write about yourself. If you'd like somewhere to start, I've left a few journal prompts in the description below. You can try one, mix a few together, and just see how it feels. Now, before I close, I just want to say something about personalizing your journal. It doesn't have to be about luxury brands or expensive stationery. Sometimes less really is more. So, you can do as much or as little as you'd like. You can spend as much or as little as you'd like. It is totally up to you. That is the beauty of it being something personal to you. You can use stickers, cutouts, pens, paint, whatever you'd like. Just let it be this extension of your personality. Let it reflect your vibe, your interests, your little corner of the world. So, if there's one thing to take away from this conversation, it's journaling doesn't have to look a certain way. It can be messy, creative, reflective, or practical. The point is simply to create a small space where you can slow down, notice your thoughts, and build a better relationship with yourself. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope something stayed with you, and if not, that's okay too. Please feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts on this episode or if there's something you'd like to hear more about. And I hope you'll tune in for the next one. Bye.